helpful.
Done. We don't have a microphone on this side,
Which kind of these?
any kind.
I can give you, this is,
Is this a microphone?
yeah, that's for that system, and that's for the online system.
That's for you too. Because Marnie talks so much.
Shout into it, Lauren.
Is it on?
Yeah,
So I get green.
somebody's gonna appreciate that later.
By the way, that was Chelsea that did that,
She would
Mr. Chair.
know, I think.
5:30.
All right, call the Planning Board and Zoning Commission meeting to order for September 9th, 2025. Can I have, before I do call to order, welcome Perry to the board.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And could I have roll call, please?
Robert?
Perry.
No, he's just doing a
Last
roll
name.
call.
He's doing last name roll call.
Or just here.
Here.
Gray,
Here.
Tupin,
Here.
Eccles Bell,
Here.
Boise,
Here.
Conley,
Conley, here.
Benedetto.
Here. Next on the agenda is a review of the minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes for August 27th, 2025?
I move to approve the minutes of August 27th, 2025 as written.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion, corrections?
Abstain.
Hearing none, call the vote, please.
Robert,
Abstain.
Gray.
Yeah.
Tupin.
Yeah.
Eccles Bell,
Yes.
Boise,
Yes.
Conley,
Yes.
Benedetto.
Yes. All right, I guess going down through communications from board and council, Urban Renewal Agency, we met on Monday, had a discussion with folks from Kansas State University. A lot of discussion revolved around setting up a meeting with the city council and planning board for them to review the scenarios that Blake has come up with for the urban renewal area, as well as report out on what their report and findings were. And that'll probably be, was kind of towards the end of October, wasn't it, Mayor?
Yeah, I don't have the specific dates in front of me, but we looked at the end of October. My recollection is that it is not on a regularly scheduled night for either planning board or council, but it was like those same days on the empty week that were proposed.
It was the 15th and 16th in October, and then the following week, the same Wednesday, Thursday, right, if I recollect.
Okay. And then there'll be a community-wide meeting scheduled in December or October, depending on Blake's and the staff from Kansas State's schedule. And that is to brief the community and follow up on the same information and get their input on what those reports came out as, both Blake's scenarios report, as well as the other report, the visit report on the visit. Any questions?
Is there a draft or something that we can actually read?
They're still working on that.
Okay.
So I think as far as the draft on their field visit, I think she thought,
By the end of the month.
yeah,
End of
probably
September.
the end of the month.
So
Okay.
you'll see it before we do a presentation joint meeting.
Okay.
Any other questions? Go ahead, and city council.
Yeah, so, we appointed a new board member, or the mayor appointed a new board member for the planning board last night. Welcome, Perry. Otherwise, we did pass 2 resolutions for renaming some streets. But otherwise, in terms of planning board, not a whole lot of updated news. There were concerns about the airport after the accident. So that might just be something we take into consideration as we're doing zoning, but realistically, I think it's been pretty well thought through, so.
How about the county?
We didn't meet in between our meetings, so
All right.
next week.
Communication from the mayor.
Nothing, thank you.
Okay.
Wow.
So move on to, new business. Don't think we have any. One online. Did you have something, Jeremy?
No, I don't have any new business.
Okay. Then I'll go ahead. Is there anybody online that would, I'll open up for public comment on any of the agenda items. There's nobody in the room, so anybody online?
Seeing no response, Mr. Chair.
All right. So move on to old business, and that's review of our 2025 zoning regulations updates with Jeremy and Greg. And I guess I'll open it up or turn it over to you, Jeremy, to kind of lead us through the discussion.
Yeah, I think Greg, the last time we talked about this, was prior to the last meeting, conditional use permit. The task essentially was for the, planning board to review the section 3 amendments that we had put together. And basically start with the table of permitted land uses by district. And so I think that's just where we need to start, as far as, basically going through that table and list of uses. I think just to start it off, mostly, Greg and I have talked a lot about the residential, uses listed in, from all the districts, which you can see compiled into that table. And in an effort to try to make it more streamlined, and consistent with some other things that we've seen across the state, including other jurisdictions in which I do zoning review. Two things. We would propose to make any district that allows single-family residential to also allow, basically to allow 2 units per lot, in all of the districts except for the or the P1 and P2. This does several things. I think it addresses the accessory dwelling unit requirements that are in, that were enacted in 2023 by the legislature, in which that legislation, that law requires that any lot that's allowed to have a single family residential use on it has to allow for an accessory dwelling unit. And it puts a bunch of stipulations on that, that, it can't be over 1,000 square feet or 75% of the gross floor area of the single family home, and some other things. But essentially, I think that's one. And then the second one is that there's other legislation that also came out in 2023 that requires any communities over 5,000 people, you're required to allow 2 units for any lot that has single family residential. So I think that it does 2 things. It puts us into compliance with the accessory dwelling unit law. Actually, Red Lodge becomes less stringent than the law. And then we are essentially in compliance with the requirements for communities over 5,000. And then what we talked about was essentially anything over. So what we've done in other communities that I work in is we've required anything over 2 units on any lot requires a conditional use permit. So That I think simplifies this table down into basically single family. You could basically make line one up to 2 residential units permitted use, and then a second line that's 3 units or more is conditional use. I think that just really simplifies things. It basically just requires that anything more than 2 units comes to the planning board for review, so that the planning board can review that, the layout, the design, all those other things that we require for conditional use permit. So, and then the only other thing that we talked about was we have manufactured home communities allowed within the C3N district. We would recommend that we add RV parks into that as well. Two things on that, or one thing on that, the legislature enacted in this last legislature that RV parks and mobile home parks or manufactured home communities are no longer a subdivision. So those have to be reviewed under zoning. So going forward within the city of Red Lodge. And so I think addressing that and adding RV parks into your permitted land use section for residential uses, or we could put RVs under commercial uses, non-residential uses as well. So anyway, that's just to start off the conversation. And Greg and I didn't really go down through the non-residential uses quite yet. We thought we basically just kind of open that up for planning board discussion on any non-residential use changes or discussion.
Okay, well, let's start off, I guess, talking about the changes for R1 and R2 to allow 2-family duplexes in those 2 zoning areas. Those are basically have and been basically low density. So that would be quite a change. We do allow, I think, ADUs in those 2 zones as well. But anyway, I'll start with you, Chelsea.
I'm here for it. I think that duplexes more often than not can essentially house just as many folks, as well as still have the aesthetic that we're looking for. I think that I'm here for having duplexes within R1 and R2.
Yeah, I think the more family housing units we can squeak in, the better.
Sandy?
I think R1 and R2 are larger land masses, like you said, they're low density. They already allow an ADU, but of course an ADU has to be smaller than the main house. And I don't see a problem having 2 homes on it, whether it's a duplex or what. I'm just wondering, if we allow a duplex, then would we not allow an ADU? Would you see where I'm going?
Yeah.
So yeah, Greg and I did talk about that too. And so the law says, that was done in 2023, says that for any lot that has a single family residential use, you have to allow accessory dwelling unit. So if the lot already has two units on it, then essentially no, you can't put an accessory dwelling unit on it. They could, I take that back, they could potentially put an accessory dwelling unit on it if we allow for over 3 units as a conditional use permit. Right? So if you say, 3 units or more are allowed as a conditional use permit, if they have the sufficient lot area to allow for a 3rd unit, they could come in and ask for a conditional use permit for a 3rd unit.
At that point, you can either approve or deny on that. And with how it's written there, sorry to jump in, but it's dwelling unit, not necessarily duplex, so it changes from how we have it written here.
Exactly.
So it's still ADU, and yeah, I think that it's kind of covered there, where if there's already an ADU and a single-family home, they'd have to come in and ask to put in. Or if it's a duplex, they'd have to come in and ask to put in an ADU. It wouldn't be assumed.
Correct.
John?
You know, I think following the state laws is also a good play, you know, a good play on us as well. So, I mean, at some point, we're gonna have to address those as well, you know. But I agree. I agree with you.
Perry?
Poor
Do you have any
Perry.
thoughts?
No, I don't have, as he proposed it, I'm fine with that.
Sue?
It sounds like a good strategy for easing into it.
Okay, well, I guess, question is that you know, that really changes the purpose of our low-density rural residential district as well as our medium, or as well as the R2. So, and right now, the wording in that is, facilitate, provide a low-density residential uses for single-family homes, low-impact home businesses and accessory uses. So, and then I think it's similar wording for the R2.
It is.
So the question, I guess, I have is, how would this zoning allowing for two dwelling units, I understand the ADU thing. We do allow ADUs in R1 and R2, so we do meet the state requirement for that. But my question is, how does this change the effect on the intent of those two zoning areas?
I mean,
I think that,
we can amend the intents, the intent of those districts in section 4.3.82 under R1 and R2. If that's the way you want to go, that's, you know, I think, you know, the lot sizes still lend themselves to low density development. I don't think adding, in my opinion, I don't think adding or allowing one or two units on a lot increases the density dramatically. If you go 3+, that's a different story, right? I mean, essentially, you're already allowing 2 units on every lot because you allow accessory dwelling units. So every lot could put an accessory dwelling unit on their lot and you have 2 units. So you're already really allowing 2 units on every lot anyway.
Well, the difference is in size. And there's a big difference between an ADU and a duplex.
Mhm.
And I'm just trying to think about those people that are currently living in these low density areas. The reason they're living there is because they have a large lot size and it's a single family dwelling unit. They didn't buy those properties with the idea that they were gonna have a duplex next to them. So the reason I'm bringing this up is this is quite a departure from what we've had in the past in terms of our zoning and the intent for these, for R1 and R2. So I guess that's the question that I'm raising.
well, the minimum lot size in R1 is 10,000 square feet. In R2, R3, R4, the minimum lot size is 5,000 square feet. So there's a big difference between R1 and R2. So I'm thinking that maybe we could leave R1 as the low density for the 10,000 square feet. And then bring R2 back into the R3 deal, because they're 5,000 square feet, same as all the other lots in Red Lodge to build on. So maybe leaving low density in R1 might be the way to go.
Just to your point on the space, I think about some of the duplexes in town versus some of the ADUs you've seen in town. And I feel like some of the duplexes are a little less offensive to the neighbors than the actual
ADU.
ADUs. I mean, you know, you look at Kathleen's house across the street, I would assume that's a single-family dwelling. You have a lot of places that have downstairs apartments or an up and down, and it's actually the same footprint with a larger backyard than just the ADU space. So I think it actually leans into some flexibility in terms of how that second dwelling goes in. And again, it's not necessarily always gonna be the case, but I do think that it provides that opportunity.
Any other comments?
I agree with what Chelsea just said, and I get it, especially on a 5,000-foot lot, up-down duplex is entirely different than a front-back or side-by-side. And I mean, with your setback requirements, you're really limited on by your lot size to how big the structure can actually be. And if you're gonna put an ADU on that in addition to that, I think it's dependent upon the lot, and that almost, to me, would require conditional as opposed to permitted. You know, just, especially in this part of town, I mean.
Yeah, if you think about the backyards, like if you're in that R2 space and you have the ADU back there that's actually supposed to be functional living space on the front side, you don't get much yard anymore. I know that a friend of mine was looking at a rental over there on Hagen, and it used to have a beautiful, huge backyard, and now it's got another unit back there, and she's like, there's about, from me to you, yard space.
Green.
Yeah, so I think it actually lends to providing more spatial functionality.
I think we need to keep clear that R3 is the majority of the town.
Right.
And so, and basically the core of the town, where R1 and R2 are is basically around the fringe.
Outline area, yeah. Well,
So I think, we need to sort of keep both these areas within the context and the intent of why they were established. And Sandy raises a good point about, since minimum lot size in the R2 is basically the same as R3, and probably making the exception for R2 might make a little bit more sense, but go ahead, Harry.
well, you know, I understand what you're saying, Jeff, about R1, and I'm in agreement, but I mean, I'm not knowledgeable enough, I guess, in that area. How many of the areas that are currently R1 aren't governed by HOAs, which I don't think we can overcome the HOA. If the HOA says no accessory dwelling units or additional units, then that's the way it's gonna be, and I don't know that we could force our will on that, but, so that kind of makes that, I mean, if they're already governed by an HOA and that's what the HOA says, what we do really doesn't have a lot of.
Jeremy, can you bring up a map of our zones so people can sort of see the context, or Greg?
Yeah, most of R1 is actually not governed by HOA. R2, on the other hand, more so R3 is governed by HOA.
Because it's a golf course.
Yeah, so there is a lot of R2 specifically on the west side of
Is
town.
that the way, okay.
So I mean, it's
It actually,
scattered about, but it's a lot on the,
Island at Rock Creek is there? Isn't that Island at Rock
that's
Creek?
R4.
I was looking at this little tiny map.
I'm looking at this big map.
Oh, you're no fun, because this one doesn't cut it.
Right, yeah. No. But you've got it pulled up, so. The colors are different than me. The colors different.
I think I have it in 11.
So I guess the other question is state law, if we're trying to be in accordance with that, does that allow us to say R1 can't have?
Well, we're not under that state law.
Well, I know, but
Yeah,
that was kind of the state.
Yeah, but I guess I questioned, I mean, when are we gonna reach that 5,000?
But that's changing now too. That 5,000 number is changing. From
Yeah.
what Greg's saying. the
R1
state
is
law.
green.
Has it changed?
Yep.
So it hasn't changed, but Jeremy and I were talking about this earlier.
R1 is
A lot of those
77.
regs that are 5,000 person, they're gonna get passed down most likely to class 2, I think that's what they call it, municipalities, and then eventually gonna become statewide on zoning
And
rules. It's
the
nothing
old kind of,
set in stone.
When will that happen?
There's no timeline, it's just what the planners around the state think slowly gonna happen.
It won't happen next year because the legislature won't meet.
Yeah,
Go
I mean,
ahead.
I think there's a big push nationally. I would mention that there's been a lot of talk in the recent weeks of the current administration issuing a national housing emergency declaration this fall. And there may be some trickle down effects to that, which may require some zoning reforms based on grants and things like that. So I think I would just say it's probably coming, either at the state level, or the federal government down to the states to require it, certain zoning reforms to allow higher density. And yeah, I mean, I think it's only a matter of time, but you know, there's nothing saying that you have to do it now. You can always, obviously you can always wait, until anything's mandated by the state, but, yeah, I mean, I guess, my only other thought is there, as far as impact wise, on water, sewer, traffic, parking, there's no difference between an ADU and a second dwelling unit on a lot. So your impacts are
Right.
exactly the same, essentially. So by allowing an ADU, you don't have any additional impacts if you just change it to allowing 2 units per lot. But I do understand the idea of, larger lots, single family. So those are the kinds of things that you guys need to discuss and decide. Our recommendation is just trying to simplify and allow some more density, where it's needed, so.
Greg?
And I guess just one clarification, because I was looking at the ADU definition today. They can be attached, detached, or internal to a single family.
Mhm.
So they're not necessarily a backyard shed or house. It could be a duplex type setup.
But isn't there something that says it has to be smaller than the primary residence?
Yes,
And that was kind of
Yeah.
my comment, that I think what I heard
yes.
Jeff saying earlier, is saying you have a house and you allow an ADU is not necessarily synonymous with saying duplex are just automatically granted.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was the point I was making, was that since an ADU is limited to 1,000 square feet or less, right?
1,200,
What's that?
1,200. An ADU shall not exceed 1,200 square feet.
State law says 1,000 square feet or 75% of this, with 75% of the gross floor area of the single family residence, whichever is less.
Yeah,
So there's a change, or 75%
that's a change we'll have to make in our zoning.
definition.
Henry.
Correct. Yep, we know that.
Okay,
Yep. I guess what we were trying to do is we wanted to have this discussion first before we talked about any of the ADU stuff, because if you do this, you don't have to have the ADU stuff in here at all, because you already allow 2 units on every lot that allows single family residential, right? So you're covered you cover what's required in the law. So you don't even have to have ADU. So the other part of that Greg and I are always thinking about with this too is how can we make staff's job easier as well? So one thing is if we don't have to do a bunch of analysis on how big the unit is, and make sure it meets all the requirements, and that obviously makes staff's job easier. So that's just another piece of this too, is we're trying to simplify things so that there's less ambiguity, less work for staff. It's just, hey, do you have 2 units? If you have 2 units, we can permit it. If it's more than 2 units, you got to go to the planning board for a conditional use permit. Or we just don't allow anything more than 2 units, right? So that's just where we're coming from, but certainly understand where you guys are coming from as well.
Well, the difference between 2 units and an ADU and a primary is that the ADU is restricted in size, where if you have 2 units, it's not restricted in size.
Well, it
So
would be
you just have to-
restricted it would be restricted based on setbacks and parking requirements and all those other things.
All of those things, but it wouldn't be restricted to 1,000 square feet.
Correct.
So you could have two 3,000 square foot homes on one of the nice large lots in R1. If we allow 2 units.
Correct.
That seems over much.
What did you say?
I was pointing out that if you allowed 2 units and you didn't specify an ADU and a primary, that they could both be 3,000 square feet. There could be 2 3,000 square foot homes on one lot with a 10,000 square foot minimum on the lot. It just,
Yeah.
I think
This, your lot.
well, you can't split it. It can't be sold separately.
Yeah.
I mean, not the lots, but you
Yeah,
can have
there's
it almost condo style.
Yeah, that's the whole point. So I kind of like leaving R1 with a primary and an ADU that has some restrictions on size.
That's for the rural, the R1, right?
That R1 is what I thought we'd start with 1 and
Yeah. That's a good idea.
All right. Any other questions on that? I think what I'll do is just kind of go
Do you
around
want
the
to
table.
do you want to do 2 units, or a second unit as a conditional use permit in the R1, or just not allow a second unit except for an ADU?
I think conditional use seems appropriate.
What about attached versus detached?
I don't necessarily mind if it's attached or detached. I mean, again, they're big lots.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
actually, I'd rather see 2 attached, at 3,000, 6,000
Oh, yeah.
feet of attached as opposed to a 3,000 and a 3,000.
Depending on the lot. And
Yeah,
again,
well,
that's
it does.
why, and that's why conditional use
Conditional
is
use,
great. It's like,
yeah.
depending on the scenario.
but we have to be very, very consistent with
Yeah.
our conditional uses.
We don't have that much flexibility to deny a conditional use
Unless we,
unless we have some really good rationale for it. So that's
Mhm.
another thing to.
Good point.
just that we don't like it doesn't work.
Good.
Well, let's for now, let's do R1, let's just do single family, and that's the only thing, and an ADU. And we'll just make that in the table. And we'll move forward.
That agrees with the language here too, so.
How do people feel about that? Chelsea?
I would always prefer to see more density, and I think that, again, it could be, I wonder more so if there's a way to address setbacks more specifically in R1, to where it would essentially create that spatial compromise. That's my thought.
Lot front setback is 75, sides are 10-10, rear is 10.
Because I would rather see 2,000 square foot units than a 4,000 square foot house. That's a personal, but again, that's where I'm at. I say I'd rather see permitted.
I mean, I think the R1 district is pretty small. There's not a ton of lots in R1.
And that's.
So,
I
I think-
But one of these big lots sold fairly recently. The one on Old Kainu, on the right-hand side, on the hill. So what could happen there? I mean, you know,
They could put 2 buildings there. And it's a huge lot.
2 gigantic buildings looking over the homes on the other side. They're not cute.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
Maybe that area
includes
should
a
be
lot of
part
the slope too, doesn't it?
It does include slope. It includes highway, the Beartooth Highway,
308.
308 down. But it also includes that one on the corner that was Doc Kane's. So it includes his as well.
And then there's I'm trying to think of like all the vacant lots in that district. And there's the one off of Holly Valley, there's one off Kainu.
And Holly Valley is,
It's not that big.
no, the one that Charlie Siddle used to own, with the ponds.
Oh, right, yeah.
And that's a really big piece of land. I think it's 13
It's already been
acres.
developed, isn't it?
Kind of. I mean, it's already got, 2 cabins that are small, a garage with a living quarters, and they left, a space for a big house, closer to Kainu, where Kainu and Park come together, that they use for a helicopter pad, but the intent was to build there. But if somebody new comes in and buys that land,
They could still put 2 houses. Like, that's where, I mean, I'm thinking of this huge lot, it's like.
well, they wouldn't be able to build anything else, there's already 2 houses on it.
Yeah, so I don't.
Are you talking about the,
Helicopter pad.
are you talking about the north end of Keene?
I'm talking about the south end,
Of the south end,
where,
okay.
where Kainu curves,
It's
if you
the-
go due south.
Okay.
And 308, it comes from, they come into it from Highway 308 and goes down, you can see a big piece of land there.
Yep,
So you've got Park Avenue on the west. And then it goes into, what's the address on that? Holly Valley Lane? Is it Holly Valley
It's
Lane?
basically across the street from Holly Valley,
Yeah, it's across the street from Holly Valley Lane.
big lot.
It's a compound lot, meaning a lot where you have a compound.
Yeah.
So, you know, I look at that parcel, and to me, it seems like, you know, it has more potential to be subdivided
Yes, it
Then-
does.
than,
Yeah.
than to, you know, but anyway, I guess just continue around.
I don't have anything else.
What's that?
I don't have anything.
All right, so I guess what we've got kind of on the table is, you know, Sandy's proposal to leave the R1, as is and allow for an ADU. So is that, everybody pretty much okay with that?
Absolutely.
I think I prefer that to the 2 units.
What's that?
I prefer that to the 2 units.
Prefer 2.
Yeah.
We have pretty much of a consensus.
Except for Chelsea.
Yeah, that's normal.
I guess, Jeremy, what you were talking about would be to, keep the R1 as single family and then add in, the provision to allow for an ADU.
Is already there.
no, that sounds good, basically just keep it the way it is, basically right now, that's fine.
So let's go to R2, and, this one probably lends itself a little bit better to what Jeremy's proposing, just simply based on the lot size.
So if you look at the screen, Greg basically has R2 through C4 as, that should just be 2 dwelling units, I think, Greg, not less than. I would just, cause you have we have the single family line in there now, so I would put permitted in all of those. And then 2 dwelling units, or
I think it's permitted above that.
permitted. And then, anything greater than 2 dwelling units would be conditional use. Again, I think the reason we're proposing that is because it's more of a simplification so that staff is not trying to decipher between building types and duplexes versus single homes on, multiple homes on a lot versus, right? Typically, we don't do that in zoning. Typically, it's just based on the number of dwelling units. So, if you want to go further into it and just say anything over the 2 units is a conditional use permit, we could say, maybe R2 is, anything over 2 units is conditional use. And then when we get into R3 and R4, maybe it's anything over, 3 units as a conditional use permit or something like that. But like I said, just trying to kind of simplify this because of we have a ton of different multifamily options in the current zoning, and it gets very complicated and confusing.
Okay, the thing that I printed out is different than what I'm looking at on the screen.
Because you changed it in.
Okay,
That's because Greg
Yeah.
is changing it on the fly here.
oh, good. Okay,
No,
so multifamily larger than 2 units is a conditional use only in R3. Correct?
In the current zoning.
The way I'm
That-
looking at this.
That's in the current zoning. We're proposing that all of the districts from R2 through C4 change to greater than 2 dwelling units requires a conditional use permit.
I like that.
Um,
What about the commercial
yeah,
C1s
Same thing.
onward?
Yep.
So
That's
all
what
the way across the board?
Now,
So you get
that's
to
what we're
pop-
proposing right now, right? So if you wanted to do something different, that would be fine. You could say anything over 4-plex in commercial requires anything greater than 4 units, we could just add another line in here, right? And if you want to say, no, we don't want to see, we as a planning board don't want to see a conditional use permit for anything more than 4 units in the commercial zones, then that's fine. I'm fine with that. This is just a starting point. This is what I have developed in all of the other zoning that I've developed in other small towns similar to Red Lodge. 2 dwelling units is allowed. Anything over 2 dwelling units is a conditional use permit.
I'm just looking at C3N, and, I mean, if you go back and look at why the URD was formed, I don't even think that single family is appropriate, period, in that whole area. It doesn't fit with the discussions for the last 3 years. And I think more than 2 units is actually preferred and desirable.
More than 4.
More than 4. I mean, that whole area down, if just going all the way down on C3N, I think we need to rethink that if we're gonna go forward with the URD. I don't know, Jeff, is that?
Well, we definitely need to address the URD differently than the rest
Then the
of,
rest of, yeah.
than the rest of, the C3.
So I think you're right, the C3 North
Right.
should be just a permitted use of larger than 2.
Yeah, but single family, I just.
That's not, that was not the intent.
Well, that's what he just,
Again, he's saying
yeah.
not permitted, like
Everything.
no-go. Yeah.
Well,
Single families and.
well,
That's permitted everywhere. I mean, that brings up the downtown too. Do you want to see somebody, Mary, I love your favorite example, on the corner here, do you want to see a house built?
oh yeah, he loves that. Well, C3 North is not part of the URD, so, I mean, well, the majority of C3 North is.
Yes,
Well, a lot of it anyway. We'll just leave it at a lot.
maybe we pull the URD area out into a separate category like we have.
Or that you should call commercial, too. That's not.
And there's a whole lot of commercial stuff.
Yeah.
If we included that for any and every commercial purpose, not professional offices, then the entire chamber would be
Yeah.
objecting to it.
We should have an overlay for the URD.
That would be, that's what I think, looking for.
Yeah,
Sandy. Thank you.
definitely
Yeah.
an overlay.
Jeremy, do you have any thoughts about what we're talking about here on C3N as it's related to the URA? I guess, sounds like there's 2 options, and that's probably getting beyond the discussion of the rest of the table here, but we're gonna have to deal with it at some point. Is one would be to treat the URA as an overlay with less stringent zoning applied to it than current, or with zoning that is more compatible with the purpose and intent of the URA? Or do we create a separate zone for the URA?
Well, so typically in overlay districts, it's additional standards on top of the underlying zoning. So if you have use restrictions in that district, and that's more restrictive than the overlay district, then that standard applies. Does that make sense? And then the overlay district is just some additional standards that are on top of the underlying zoning. So you can't, the overlay district can't put less stringent standards on the underlying zoning, if that makes sense. So if you want less stringent standards within that district, you need to create a new district with its own standards. The overlay district intent is meant to be more restrictive. It's to add additional restrictions. So for instance, like in a historic overlay district, right? You're adding historic restrictions within that overlay district, the airport overlay district, right? You're adding additional restrictions to the underlying zoning. You're not relaxing those standards.
Sorry, just gonna jump in there. So specifically, if we'll call it the commercial historic overlay district, we said no residential use, or I don't want to say that, sorry. But,
Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
But specifically, no single-family dwellings within the historic commercial district, so downtown. Like, that would be more restrictive, but
Correct.
it's more appropriate for that space.
Mhm.
So in the
Correct.
urban renewal district, saying no single-family use,
Would have to have its own zoning,
well, no, it'd have that overlay.
but the
Because
Oh,
overlay
yeah,
has
the
more
overlay-
restrictions.
Yep,
Exactly,
it's,
that's what I'm saying, taking away
Right.
residential use. It's
yeah,
restricting
in
more.
Chelsea's case, yes, the overlay district would be more restrictive because within that overlay, you're not allowing single family residential use. But within,
Or about-
outside of that overlay district, if this table reflects that we do allow it, right? Then outside of the overlay, it is allowed.
The only concern I have with the urban renewal district is also where it meshes with the HIBA historic overlay. And isn't that really specific to being single-family homes?
Mhm.
It actually doesn't, there's no place where it
It shouldn't,
overlaps.
no, because it
No,
doesn't
it
cross
does.
78.
Right at my house.
Are you high bug?
I'm HIBA.
Okay, you're.
I'm historic HIBA
you-
and urban renewal.
You overlap.
Yep, I'm the overlap house.
You're right at the, you're right.
And my
okay.
neighbors are yeah, so they're C4 across the street. We're in a weird bridge corner.
But you're,
We can
you're,
fix that,
you're an existing use though, Chelsea,
Yeah.
so that wouldn't be impacted.
but
by
we
the
can
change.
fix
What if
that.
I wanted to rebuild?
Well,
We
that's
need to
true,
fix
yeah.
the zoning map anyway.
Right, yeah, no, I'm just saying, like, there is an example of where this would be a conflict, there's something to be aware of when you do it.
Maybe you should-
Because that little section, we have every overlay you can think of.
No, there's more.
Oh, yeah, let's keep adding them, let's get airport in there, like.
Oh, yeah.
you could apply for a condition.
Right, yeah. I'm not planning on building anything anytime soon, I put too much money into that damn house.
Well, my only question about not allowing single-family units, there's a number of single-family residences within the
Currently.
URA that currently exist.
There's,
So that would make them, non,
we almost have to carve it up.
It would
yeah.
grandfather them in.
Yeah, grandfather them in.
Or, yeah,
But then in moving forward in the future, again, if they wanted to, like if someone bought it and wanted to tear down and build a bigger house or something, then
Then they're restricted.
then they're restricted.
mhm.
Might be
Or I
something-
would also throw out if a structure is destroyed by fire or something like that, I've run into issues with that in other jurisdictions where, you know, any restrictions
Rebuild.
like that, it gets complicated for somebody to reestablish a use after after disaster too, so.
Is there,
I think there's a way to do that.
I mean, most zoning, I believe your zoning allows for reestablishment through probably a conditional use permit process or some form like that. I can't remember. I'd have to look, but most regulations do allow for that, but it's just a process. Whereas if you already, maintain that single family residential use, then that's one thing, I guess one less thing they have to worry about if their house burns down.
so Jeremy, question on that, is there a way to write it to where they don't have to come in for approval? It's just, reestablishing your use is fine?
We'd have to look at the non-conforming use section and look at how that's written and how, and just, we could come up with revisions, usually things are written, if a structure is destroyed beyond 60% its value, then the new use or structure has to comply with zoning.
Which is
but then there's usually a process to reestablish a non-conforming use or structure, if you can't conform, which is usually like a conditional use permit or a variance or something like that.
Jeff, is this a good time to bring up form-based zoning as opposed to traditional zoning?
Go ahead.
Well, our consultants, Jeremy, from KSU, when we were having the same conversation, basically in the urban renewal meetings, said there's a thing called form-based zoning, which I know they use it in Lafayette, Colorado, to carve out an area to do some specialized development. And it's basically more inclusive unless it basically lay out what you're looking for, not what you don't want. It's kind of hard to describe, but
no, I'm familiar with it. I would say, under our current task, we're updating the zoning, not rewriting the zoning necessarily.
Right.
That gets into a little bit bigger effort if we want to go that route. And, because there's a lot of, I've been through some of that, and some of the bigger, like Billings did it, in their downtown district here in the last couple years. Helena's starting to do it kind of in their downtown. I think they're kind of starting a process to do some of that. But it's fairly intensive with the public process and stuff to do that. I know Billings, it took them a couple of years to get theirs done. So I'm not saying we can't do it, but maybe that's something we look at moving forward after this as part of the URD stuff or something like that, a specific, a very specific action or thing, need to look at in the future type thing.
I've only brought up the issue about that particular part of the north elevation because the community's expressed through multiple input sessions the desire to see certain things done there. And I guess if we drag our feet and the developer comes in and wants to do other things, and that puts us in a position of approving things that are not going to be popular, so.
And on that note, one thing that did come up in some of those planning sessions specifically was really thought out and careful process.
Yes.
So that does fit very nicely to where for that specific district, there is a different process for how that's included.
Jeremy, I was looking at 4.7.25 repairs of partially destroyed structures. And we have, if more than 50% or more of the floor area of a structure containing a non-conforming use is damaged by fire or other action not the willful act of the owner, the structure shall not be restored or reconstructed to a non-conforming use. Did you say 75%?
Well, it just depends on the zoning. Like the zoning regulations I work with in other jurisdictions say 60%. So it's just, that your zoning is 50, others say different, it's more of a preference thing, but 50% makes sense too. But there should be a process to allow for reestablishment of a
That's what I think to see.
non-conforming use or structure too. So either, sometimes it's a conditional use permit or sometimes it's a variance, just depends on the zoning, or the preference. In this case, with the planning board processes you already have in place, a conditional use permit probably makes sense to do that for reestablishment
Okay.
of that. And we can write that into that section.
Okay, got it. I made a note.
All right.
Okay,
So
oh
let's-
boy.
So we've been we were going through the two-family duplex discussion and then kind of got focused on the
We went down a rabbit trail.
ADU.
So-
But, so, given the changes, I guess, that were being proposed, basically the only change right now, just to make sure we're all on the same page, is in R2, that would be changed to a P for a duplex, correct? And then it would be P permitted all the way through to C2, right?
Greg, can you pull up the ones with the changes that you already made?
Okay.
Yeah, 'cause that's what we have again.
I can't read that at all.
Well, I still say
That's
commercial,
what
I don't think we limit two for commercial.
Yeah,
Limit.
No,
agreed.
because why would we?
Yeah.
I mean, I've got a C2, I don't want that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm at a 3, why would I wanna go down to 2?
Yeah.
And have
So,
that-
so up on the
This is-
screen is what we're proposing. So we're basically saying two dwelling unit, single family is allowed in all of them. Two dwelling units are allowed in R2 and above through commercial. And then greater than two dwelling units from R2 through commercial is conditional use.
And I think what John's saying, and I agree with it, is anything from C1 through C4, it should be permitted higher. Like, I don't think you should have to go through a conditional use to put in 3 dwelling units in a
Okay.
C.
So Greg, just add another line under greater than two dwelling units. And just, we'll say greater than 4 units.
Yeah, like even numbers is good with me.
Yep, and then just C1 through C4 conditional.
There's a P up there.
I'm good with that.
And then greater than 2 dwelling units would be part P. Right there.
Yep,
Where's 3?
if you got that.
So multifamily larger than 2 units is conditional in the R2, R3, R4, and in C1 and up, it's permitted?
So, yeah, there you go. Greg.
Yeah, so basically up to 4 is permitted throughout C1 through C4.
As a permitted use, and then anything over 4 units, so 5 units plus would require a conditional use permit.
In R4 up to C4?
And I don't think we included R4.
C1 through C4, yes.
I'd be content with R4 being included in that too.
I had, R4 as a conditional use larger than 4 units.
It's larger than 2 units currently. But I'm good with that, because right now I think in our zoning it's up to 4 permitted. Is that right?
For C1,
Yes, yep, multifamily less than or equal to 4 units is permitted in R4. Greater than 4 units is conditional in R4.
But yeah, so that works
I'm
for
glad
me.
that you're fixing it, not me.
okay, I'm gonna kind of bring us back to the C1 and why that was created. And why we have a restriction on anything greater than 2 units. And the reason is, those are primarily a mix of old residential houses. And commercial uses. In the past, we've gotten quite a bit of response from people living in that transition zone about the effect of changing that out of that transition in terms of what the effect would be on those residences. So I guess that would be my only reservation about changing the greater than 2 dwelling units to a permitted use. I think it's currently conditional, and I think it probably should remain conditional.
I'm looking at the properties that would be affected by it, and I think there's a total of like,
Well, there's a bunch at the south end of town,
if there's one block on the south end of town,
actually quite a
and
bit.
Well,
both sides.
it's more than one block.
It's a lot. It's,
It goes from 14th Street
So this is
to
gonna be
18th
what they're
Street.
talking about, so those,
to 19th, all the way to 19th.
South.
yeah.
It goes to the 19th Street Bridge.
I'm currently using the map that's on the city's website.
Yeah, that's what I'm using too.
And what I'm seeing is different than what you're telling me and what I'm seeing there. So that's a little concerning.
It is a little concerning.
This is what I have.
Totally different. 'Cause
Totally
here we
different.
have C1.
Yeah, I'm seeing C1 as just this right here.
Yeah. 3 blocks.
Yeah, literally.
And then there's like one here.
I mean, this is what the public is using to make decisions. It's a little terrifying. So yeah, I see between 15th and 16th is C1 on Main Street only, and then between 8th and 7th.
Oh,
Okay,
there's a 2016 on the top of the page and a 2022 on the bottom.
I'm using the interactive map that you click.
the one that I'm using here is 2022,
Okay, so, again, still,
February 25th,
probably
2022.
something we should, something that we should fix on our website very quickly. The interactive map, if you're on there, if you go to our page, is specifically, you go to view larger interactive
Is this the way you
zoning map.
remembered it too?
What's that?
That's the way you remembered it too?
Yeah, we changed it in
In
2022.
3 years ago, and it hasn't been updated on the website. We have the 2016 static zoning map with the larger interactive map, and that's what people are gonna be clicking on. That's what I've been using for years.
Since 2016.
Yes, since 2016.
Anyway, let's kind of bring it back to,
C1.
so right now, our zoning allows for, under conditional use for C1, 3-family unit structures. 2-family dwelling units is permitted, so I guess.
So we've got permitted there.
Right now, I'm looking at the correct map.
Was that there as well?
It's on the website, just in a very,
Different place?
So you were
Not
saying
the most intuitive.
you were wanting to change that?
Well, I'm in C2, so I'm not in C1.
Okay,
I mean,
yeah,
but I'm in more, C2 is more commercial. I mean, that's the other part of it
Right.
too.
And we're thinking more about the upstairs and the commercial,
Yeah.
you know, so we want to increase that if we can.
and I
Exactly.
think C1 is a commercial district that currently is very residential in nature, is what I'm gathering, and what I know of the spaces.
I'll point out too that C1 and C2 are both the same as far as their allowances. So they both allow single family and two dwelling units, and conditional use is 3. So that's in C1 and C2 both.
yeah, I think, at least what I was saying is for the C1, It should still be a conditional use for, 3 units,
which is what it currently is.
which currently is.
And it doesn't mention anything larger than 3 units, where in the C2, it's larger than 3 units as conditional. So they aren't exactly the same. One is 3 units conditional, period. The other is larger than 3 units conditional.
Correct.
I'm thinking that both C1 and C2 should be conditional for equal to or larger than 3.
So, I think C1, again, I agree with C1 to be conditional larger than 2, so that's 3 and up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then C2, because now I'm gonna try and find C2.
Is larger than
I
C2.
think C2 could stay 4.
Well, larger than 3 units is conditional. Right now.
Right, what I'm saying is we changed it in here to be allowed up to 4, to keep it even, basically getting rid of the 3 option.
Larger than 3 units.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it a little bit more simple.
So Greg changed it to, C1 for, greater than 2 dwelling units as a conditional use, 4 dwelling units as a conditional use. Do we want to change greater than 4 dwelling units to just a dash for not permitted
In the C1 and C2, is that,
Just C1.
in C1?
C1.
I think that greater than 4 units,
I will
Is
keep it
that-
conditional. And the reasoning for that is if you have a bunch of little apartments that are taking up the same footprint or look as good as a two-bedroom house, why not?
is that where that new complex is that we approved? That's pretty well done?
The
Is
five,
that in the
That's in
C1?
C2,
yep, or C1.
or C1?
Yeah, C1. The one that's
It's got a
across
center,
next to the,
Lupine,
yep.
yeah.
looks
Yeah.
great. So again, that to me says like, it's appropriate to leave it conditional. You don't necessarily have to get rid of it. I don't see a reason to get rid of it.
So, it has to be in the C2 or something, because
when
we
we-
wouldn't have approved it, because the way our zoning is right now, the conditional is a 3-family period. It doesn't say larger than 3. And I believe there's 6 in there,
5,
5 or 6, yeah. I don't remember.
there's 5.
She knows.
I think a big part of that is they're on essentially 3 lots.
Right, right. They put 3 lots together.
So right now, so the way we're doing with C1 is we've got conditional for greater than 2 units and conditional for greater than 4 units. And then, okay,
I like that.
And we're going to
and if
leave,
you were gonna go to 4 units, it would really depend on the lot size and whether you could put something in there.
put some lots together.
Because on those existing lots are pretty, they're standard Red Lodge, 100 by,
6250s.
yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, keep in mind that anything that somebody proposes still has to meet the minimum lot size requirements for per unit, right? So they'd still have to have the setback requirements, all those other things still have to be met. So just because it
And we-
says conditional use doesn't mean they can just do it. They still have to meet all the dimensional requirements and lot size requirements and all those things. Which
And-
staff would look at when we're talking to them, and we'd say, you know, you have enough lot size for X number of units, or, you know, those sorts of things. So,
And I think we increased the minimum lot size for each additional dwelling unit that's on a parcel too. I read that earlier today somewhere.
We did that?
Huh?
We did that?
Yeah.
Good for us. Now, there is a lot across from Roosevelt that has been used as a parking lot. That's basically half of a block here in Red Lodge. So, and that's in the C1 currently. So that means that what they could put in that lot was, larger than 2 units is a conditional, and larger than 4 units is a conditional. I don't know why we need both. Larger than 2 units is the same as larger than 4 units, I guess. And currently it says that it's a conditional for a 3-family. So whatever they would put there, if it were going to be multifamily housing more than 2 units, they would have to come to us for a conditional use permit. Okay.
I think we got agreement on that, and permitted uses in the commercial districts from C2 to C4 for higher density, basically.
Which would go toward our growth plan too.
So I think that, how do people feel about that? Does that look good?
I'd like to see it all printed out again. Because I've got lots of little scratches here, so I'm kind of confused. She's pointing to hers.
Yeah.
I don't know if we can do anything more until we actually see it black and white and think on it.
I think it's,
That kind of what everybody else.
That's fine.
Yeah, Jeremy, I think where we're going with that is we'd like to, see those, have a chance to think about those changes and come back at the next meeting and finalize, what we currently have on the screen there.
And
Yep.
do you plan to use that manufactured homes / RV parks under residential uses?
I brought that up to you guys just to start the conversation. We can do it that way, or we could put RV parks in non-residential uses. Either way, RV parks are kind of a commercial use if you really think about it, because they're, because you have a business that's typically running those and renting out the lots, right? So but it really could go into either. So I guess I don't have a preference one way or another, whether it goes here, and you could just lump it into with manufactured home communities. You could just do manufactured home communities / RV parks, because you only allow it as a conditional use in one district right now anyways. So, I think the bigger thing on that issue is we need to add RV park standards into the zoning. When we go to our specific use standards, we'll have to add a section for RV parks and basically take the development standards that are in the subdivision regulations and move them into the zoning regulations, so that we're covered if somebody does propose an RV park.
And kind of the question that crept into my mind is that when the Eagle's Nest is gone someday, and the Bastion House is leveled someday, all of that will be city-owned land, and there was discussion at one point in making that a dry RV park, and I don't think that the city was contemplating charging for that.
No, I think when we had these conversations, it was a municipal RV park where it would be charged, but we also said we're not in the business of renting RV space.
And it has to be dry.
Yeah, it'd have to be dry, it'd have to be, it's saying that was an option, but it's more so thinking if the Lupine got demolished tomorrow, putting something there, and that's actually something someone purchases and runs a business.
And then that's definitely commercial.
Right, and then, or, again, when we were talking about city-ran RV space, it was, the conversation died basically with, we don't need to be running a business.
And that would be if you charged.
And that's if you charge, but I don't think we also would want a free space on that either.
Why not? They're not getting anything.
There, but it's also park space, like, again, I think that's where it came from, is why not, or if we wanted to have some areas where people can do dry parking, like having a parking lot where people can pull up a van.
Basically a parking lot.
Yeah.
But they
like,
can live in it as opposed to our camping ordinance that doesn't allow it.
I don't think I remember having anyone living in it, but that's just
They
a,
will.
I think the conversation started down at the motel that has the few RV parks, and it was for our workers, that if they could come into town and park an RV and live in it, then they could work here. So it would be more temporary housing, but it definitely would be housing.
Yeah, let's defer that discussion.
Okay.
In terms of, yeah.
So we,
Mary, you had,
Well, just talking about the manufactured homes, I was just looking at the map again, the 2022 map, not the 2016 one. And it's showing everything west of Coots, as, R2. And that's, I mean, the,
CRV part.
part of it's, well, there's mixture in there. There's some single family, but there's mostly mobile homes on that side. So,
well, it said manufactured home communities.
right,
Manufactured homes are allowed
in R2.
in R2,
Okay,
but they're not a community.
Yeah, so this is like a trailer park or a manufactured home park where somebody develops lots that people can lease a space and pull their manufactured home onto the space and hook up to water and sewer. So it's not,
Correct.
somebody can, if somebody buys a single family residential lot or any residential lot in Red Lodge, they could put a manufactured home on it. That's not a manufactured home community. This is specifically a manufactured home park.
Isn't that what Mountain View Village is?
yeah.
Yeah.
Or not Mountain View Village,
Or
but Mountain Springs?
Springs,
Yeah,
yeah.
twice in one day.
Twice in one day.
Yeah, Mountain Springs is a mobile home community,
And it's in R2.
and they lease the land. They don't own the land under their trailer. So that's what you have on here.
And they're licensed, there's a bunch of requirements. They're licensed by the Department of Health and Human Services. The park is, there's certain restrictions on them, that sort of stuff, so.
But that's not your typical mobile home park community, because they jointly own the land. I mean,
Well,
it's
that
set up as a
particular
co-
one,
Yeah,
yeah. Actually, yeah, either they jointly own the land or somebody else.
well, they went to the state and
Right.
it was
There's
through a grant.
restrictions on it, yeah.
Yeah.
now let's go back to, I think RV parks is a little bit different than than a manufactured home as a
Community.
residential, and
Yeah,
I guess
well, the worlds have kind of blended.
my sense is, is that RV parks should be, considered a non-residential use, commercial use. But what do, Elsie?
I kind of want to do some homework on that
Yeah.
specifically, because, again, the worlds have kind of blended a little bit, to where some people, that is how they live. I have a friend who lives in a fifth wheel, and to me, it's residential in nature. It's just a matter of, Jeremy, have you seen it specifically more often in non-res? Because to me, it's residential in nature.
I would say it's commercial in nature, just because of, you typically have like a KOA, for instance, right? That's a commercial business, owns it, operates it, rents the spaces, provides the services for the RV park. I would lump it more into commercial. I think maybe it depends on the circumstance of maybe who runs it, operates it, how it's operated potentially, but I would say most of them are commercial that I'm aware of.
Well, Jeremy, you would consider, I guess, a hotel as commercial, obviously, but, so, I mean, most RV parks anymore, I mean, KOA locally doesn't, but my wife and I have an RV, and we travel, and they're almost, a lot of them are 50, 60, 70% residential.
Yeah.
You know, they're long-term renters, they're not people there for a couple of nights.
Yeah.
And but still commercial, you know, so.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, but
know,
you still have a commercial entity running that operation.
Yeah.
You know, even though I mean, the intent of an RV park, I would say was not originally for full-time living, but understanding the nature of the housing market and issues that we have now, that they've kind of turned into full-time living situations when that wasn't really the intent of them.
Yeah, well, the only reason we don't have people living here year-round in RVs is because we don't have an RV park that keeps the water on year-round, so.
I mean, now the manufactured home community, they have to pay to be in that community. So what's the difference between that and an RV community? I mean, to me, they're both residential. One hopefully is planted on the ground, and the other one, you know, has wheels, but they're living in them.
Yeah, so they're two distinct things. Manufactured homes are intended for residential full-time use, right? So the intent of a manufactured home community is to provide a space for a manufactured home to be placed for people to live full-time. RV, the intent of an RV, and it's in Montana code, right? They're not for full-time living. Even though that a lot of people are doing that now, they're not intended for that. So,
It's recreational vehicle.
Yeah.
but I think I don't know that it really matters that much where you put it, because it more matters where you allow it. So if you're going to allow, if you're going to do it the same as you have manufactured home communities and only allow it in C3N, then I don't know that it matters whether you put it under residential or commercial uses, honestly. Just as long as we have the discussion on whether or not we even want it in our zoning. Because currently, right now, it's not listed as a permitted or conditional use anywhere. So technically, we can't allow an RV park anywhere within the city of Red Lodge.
Right.
Correct.
So I guess that kind of brings me back to the Eagle Nest conversation. I mean, currently that's privately owned, and I don't think the city's negotiated anything with that. And if that landowner wanted to put an RV park there, we don't have a provision for that.
Well, he can't do that. It's in a floodway. He cannot, there's nothing permanent can be built there.
You can't put can't put infrastructure like that.
RV parks are technically allowed within the floodplain.
Yeah.
Really?
Dry
Yes.
RV parks.
Which is when we go back to that could be a use. And so we might have to consider zoning.
That's why I brought it up.
So I lean towards including just home communities in the residential units, and then the uses, because the way I'm kind of looking at this table now is not so much uses, but more so we have total units in this top table, and then the lower is your different types of uses. So I don't see, like, again, some of those things, assisted living, that's someone living there, that's residential. It's not so much that it's non-residential uses, it's just uses. And then above that is units.
Maybe that's where we're getting into trouble. Is using the terminology non-residential
Yeah.
and residential.
Yeah, instead, let's just not even consider that, and like,
What if we
have
just called
units,
it
and then this is how you can use that space.
uses?
I don't know, that's just me. I could be completely wrong there, but that's kind of how I feel about it.
Anybody
I mean,
else have?
typically in zoning, we separate residential and non-residential uses. But
And that's kind of what
I see what you're
So,
saying too. You're just saying take out the designation residential and non-residential and just have the list of uses, period.
Yeah,
Well, it simplifies us cutting apart and saying, you know, assisted living is residential.
yeah, I mean, I make the argument all the time that short-term rental is a residential use, but you're making money. Long-term rentals are residential use, but you're making money, so to me, it's, let's just not think about
Right.
that.
I guess, you know, as we're looking at doing this, we don't wanna have to do this every few years either.
Yeah.
And, in Bend, Oregon, there's a person who took about a little over an acre, and there's probably close to a dozen Airstreams that are all short-term rentals.
Yeah.
So RVs, but they're Airbnb, I mean, go on Airbnb and you can rent one of those, you know,
Yep.
so,
I mean, there's people that do it here north of town.
yeah,
They're super cute.
yeah, so, I don't know.
I don't like carrying a trailer around, but I'd love to stay in one. So, yeah, I mean, that's my thought, and I know that that's not your standard zoning, so you can shoot me down, I don't care, but.
Sue, any thoughts?
I keep getting off track because I live in a house that has a guest house on the lot. And every time we talk about one of these variables, I wonder how guest house compares to something else. And I you know, like the RVs or the ADUs, it's bigger than an ADU, but it's not as big as a house. And of course, a lot of stuff is gonna be grandfathered in until you die or move. But that couldn't be the only example of the little weird things that we haven't thought about yet.
Yeah,
Oh,
So I have a hard time getting in the other. Everything you all have said has made perfect sense to me. It's just that my mind keeps going around in the other direction.
Well, what do you think about just having a table of uses rather than residential and non-residential uses?
There may be a way to make it work.
Really, you just take the words out.
Yeah, just
yeah.
You just cross this off right
Very.
here.
cross it.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is, there are, we live in a town where there's infinite possibilities and
Yeah.
infinite uses. I have a house that in its history has been a duplex. It's also been a hot sheet boarding house that you had 12 people in it per shift and, you know, but,
My house used to be a school.
yeah, I mean, so, but that's not a permissible use today, but, I mean, you know, I guess we have to kind of step back and say, what are we trying to solve here? I mean, what are we trying to do as a community overall? And if we're trying to increase, you know, residential opportunities or make it more affordable for people, then, you know, just getting into this whole RV discussion, you know, is a park model in the backyard an ADU. I mean, because there, I mean, right now, if I see rentals posted where somebody's got a fifth wheel in their backyard and that's rented. And, you know, so we kind of have to step back and go, you know, what do we want? What don't we want? And, I mean, no matter what we do, we're gonna irritate somebody, but,
Welcome to planning.
well, that's just life, you know.
I'm kind of the ilk of what happens between the walls doesn't matter as much, as long as you're not pissing the people off outside the walls.
Right.
Like,
Infringing on other people's rights.
right,
That's what zoning is.
yep. So again, to me, whether I sleep in that space or whether I sell homemade
Tickets
doilies,
to it.
Yeah.
like,
Well, at some point, we have to get down to the nitty gritty, you know, as far as, you know, building code, because we do reference ICC, that for something to be a residential unit, it has to have a certain amount of insulation, it has to be, you know, certain construction standards, it has to be,
Yeah.
on a permanent basis,
God, we don't have to.
not there temporarily, you know, so it all has to come together somehow, so.
Yeah.
It's our challenge, I guess, what we do.
John?
Pass.
I just like, you know, it's permitted land uses by district. I would just, say either uses or drop it all together. I don't think it
Yeah.
needs to be there.
What doesn't need to be there?
I don't think the headers need to be there. It's permitted land uses by district. Why not just get into it after that? It's okay to put the residential uses at the top because that's gonna be the most common.
Mhm.
I could see that. And other than that, we're talking about uses by zone, period. Whether it's commercial or non-residential or manufacturing or whatever.
You have any thoughts? And I know Chelsea.
Yeah.
What do you, so take it back to you, Jeremy. Do you have any thoughts, thoughts on that? Does that seem reasonable?
No, I think that's fine. I mean, I don't disagree with any of that. I mean, I mean, you know, I just typically we list commercial and residential uses separately, but just because it's typical doesn't mean we have to do it that way, right? So, I mean, I agree that I think it makes it easier if we just have a one list and then we have the districts at the top and then it's either permitted or conditional or not allowed in whatever district. So I think that simplifies things. I think I'm fine with that.
All right. Do we need to circle back around? We talked, I think we have pretty good understanding of the manufactured home thing, but do we want to combine manufactured homes and RV parks? And to me, that seems like there's a difference there.
I agree.
Now we can put it anywhere we want.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be both. It could be its own header. As RV parks could be its own.
I
Oh,
agree.
its own line.
Its own line, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It could be its own line now that we don't have to worry about whether it's residential or non-residential use.
Yep.
Wow.
Simplify it.
So do we want to allow that just similar to manufactured home communities as a conditional use in this, was that C3N?
I think it would be, I would consider it more like the 4 dwelling units or commercial spaces and R4, maybe not C1,
But maybe C1.
but maybe C1.
What if we put it in all the C districts, all as conditional?
Yeah.
That we'd have to look at it and consider the size, the location, the neighbors.
Works for me.
Now, the rest of the table?
I think it's a good idea.
What's that?
I think that's a good idea. I mean,
Yeah.
Alpine Hotel,
Yeah.
there's one next to it, but
Yeah.
I don't see anything on here that would have allowed that.
Right?
So I'm gonna
Do you
bring
want
back
to do
an
the
argument.
same thing? Do you want to do the same thing with manufactured home communities, or do you want to just leave that in C3N?
I tend to leave that there in C3N.
Yeah, it's conditional.
So I'm gonna come back again on the RV park. I think we're gonna get a little bit of pushback from that. From the standpoint that in our commercial, well, in any of our zoning districts, the issue is affordable workforce housing.
Mhm.
And if you're setting aside an area zone, you're setting up the conditions to allow RV parks within our commercial zones, that's almost gonna be counter to that intent, I think.
Mhm.
So I think we wanna be careful about where we don't want RV parks in our residential zones, I don't think.
No.
That's not gonna fly.
No.
And it's not gonna fly in every one of our commercial zones, so I think we need to be a little bit careful and cautious about that.
Well, with that, I mean, again, we already made the mention that there's lots of people that are living within those. but then within an RV park, but then also that's part of the reason it is conditional, and maybe it's one of those things that the conditional application for that has some criteria that needs to be evaluated.
So when we put together the specific use standards section for RV parks, we can outline the specific, requirements that would allow it. So we could say, it has to be a certain size lot per unit space, or, per space, or I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud. So, but on the other hand, I also see where like C4 is your downtown. I don't see that you're going to get RV parks in your downtown. So I would say,
Well, and they wouldn't pass the conditional use. Yeah.
But I could definitely see C3N and C3S, the two
Yeah.
Ns, those lots are bigger lots, that could lend themselves to, RV park development. The other districts, the lots are all pretty small, so I'm not sure that you're gonna really get much out of it, but I mean, again, it's up to you.
Well, little devil's advocate here, I mean, I don't mind it in C2, and specifically, again, if we have lot size restrictions, I would rather see an RV park than a storage facility, just a thought. So, I mean, I don't necessarily mind that, even though, because again, that's kind of a funky part of town already with a lot of residential in there. But if you told me that the storage unit that's falling over, or, Northwestern Energy's relocating, and now we have a nice little campground there, a nice RV park there, I wouldn't be mad at that.
And what
it's
about-
all about how you set your restrictions.
And then there's that Quonset hut that is no longer over on Hauser.
Yep.
It's a larger piece of land. It's in the C4, and it could be a conditional use for that, and that wouldn't be a terrible use for an RV park.
Yeah.
I don't think that's what they planned, but it's not a terrible use for it.
Well, and an RV park, I mean, an RV park could be as small as 1 or 2 spaces too. It doesn't necessarily have to be, 60 unit, 60 spaces or anything. It could be as
Depending on
small
how
as
we
1
set
or
it up.
2 RV spots, right?
Think about Castaway, as you go north of Roberts, there's Castaway past the rest area, and there's like 5 or 6 units there, and those are long-term, they're not short-term stays. And obviously in the county, but I guess part of the challenge is if we're gonna permit certain uses, whether it's manufactured home communities or RV parks, there needs to be a separate set of standards developed for those. Especially manufactured homes, you want them to be tied down, so when we have a 90-mile-an-hour wind, they don't blow off
Their non-foundation?
Yeah. And again, I think that's a big part of recognizing when having those additional restrictions, but also going back to Jeff's point, what kind of started this, is those are gonna be some of your most affordable housing opportunities.
Yeah, and people bring them with them, so, a lot of times.
Again, I've lived in a lot of mountain areas and ski areas and expensive communities, and that was how we did it.
Yeah.
That's how a lot of people did it, and there's some really nice RV parks where, I would almost rather be there. I'm like, you get a pool and a hot tub, this is not so bad.
Our last,
Well, I've
planning.
got a perfect example of an RV park, and as you're going into Cody, it's just basically a
Oh,
gravel
God.
pad.
Parking lot.
No
Yeah.
trees, no shade.
And I'm always shocked that people actually pull their RVs in there.
No, but my point is,
That's why we need restrictions on
Right.
exactly what we expect.
Exactly.
I don't think that we want a big mass,
Yeah, that's a good point.
big mass of blacktop
So,
No.
without a tree in sight. So, yeah, there would need to be restrictions, but there would as well with a mobile home park.
agreed.
They have their restrictions as well. Yeah, we know what we really don't want.
Kind of going back to what he was talking about, is what do you want in that space? It doesn't necessarily matter what the building is to me, it's more so the use of it, and then also the overall aesthetic. Again, it's not just
It's driving past it.
it's
Living
driving
next to
past it's, again, what happens between those walls, I don't mind, but does it fit? Like, does it look good? Does it serve a purpose? It doesn't matter, Yeah, that's where my thought is do what you wanna do with your space, but look good doing it.
So we're proposing RV parks in C1 through C4.
Yep.
All,
Conditional.
all conditional,
Mhm.
and then have some restrictions.
Does anybody remember anything about the origins of Mountain Springsville or whatever the name of it is? It seemed to me, and I'm getting old and confused, but it seemed to me there was some kind of, special thing put in it, where there were some people in town who said this is a need, we don't have places for housing and so forth, and that there may have been some restrictions put on whether whoever was running the place could up the rent all of a sudden out the clear blue.
No. No, the only way that the rent can be raised in there is by the members of the
Okay.
community.
Yeah.
That's,
And none of those are allowed to be rented,
Yeah.
short
Okay.
or long-term.
yeah, I thought there was something special in there, so
It was
it
originally developed by HUD, was it not?
could have been.
Maybe not HUD, but NeighborWorks or
Neighborworks,
Yeah.
one
It
of
was
those.
It was a mobile home park that the
Originally,
owner, they paid rent, but they wanted them all out of there so they could develop the land
yeah,
into something more.
yeah, they have their own restrictions and
Mhm.
HOA there.
Yep.
But the only way they can raise the rent is that everybody agrees, or 75%.
Yeah.
I'd have to look at the
Yeah.
docs again.
Well, that's a big deal. I did read something not that many years ago where certain towns were having issues because whoever owned the land in that situation was raising everything.
Yeah, and I don't remember if they jointly own the land or whether it's in a trust.
It's in a trust, I believe.
I think it's in
That
a
sounds
trust,
right.
and because of that,
Mhm.
it can't happen. So it's been protected, it was well done.
Mhm.
It's hard on the owners when they wanna move, because they can't rent it out and keep it. So if they have a job somewhere else for 6 months, it sits vacant,
Mhm.
because there are some, but that's up to them to decide,
Mm.
not our problem. Yeah,
So I guess, yeah, the only place I would question the conditional use for RV is in the C1. Again, that's a transition zone, primarily residential in nature.
Conditional use.
What's that?
If we're doing conditional use, it doesn't.
Yeah, that's kind of nice.
we should be,
I have a reason why I have some reservation around just saying, well, we can do conditional use is we have never turned down a conditional use because we don't have the legal authority or rationale to turn down a conditional use. So it means that you need to really have some specific direction and criteria in order to evaluate a conditional use. So
and that's what I would propose, is that we do just that.
I was gonna say, instead of even having it within the conditional use, have it within the zoning, as Jeremy mentioned, have very specific rules within your zoning code to where you don't miss this criteria, you can't even submit for that conditional use.
And they can clearly see, once they get into zoning,
Yep.
they see what the restrictions are for that. Jeremy, have other communities done these RV parks with with restrictions based on how it can be used?
Yes, in the past, it's been in the subdivision regulations, because subdivision
Right.
regulations in state law regulated mobile home and RV parks. You basically had to go through the subdivision review process, and the subdivision regulations had those development standards in it, like, you know, how big the spaces needed to be, what the access had to be, landscaping requirements, you know, water, sewer, all that stuff. Now that it's not a subdivision or not in subdivision law, we basically need to take the development standards that you have in your current subdivision regulations, and we need to move them to the zoning regulations. And so that's what Greg and I will do, is we will, in the specific uses standard section of your zoning, we'll add a section, you already have a section for manufactured home communities. We'll add a section for RV parks, and we will start with what you have in your subdivision regulations, and we'll go from there. But that'll be our starting point, and then Greg and I will make recommendations as to some other things like minimum lot size per space, or, you know, just different things
Or
that,
max.
right?
I'm gonna propose that we table the discussion on RV parks till we actually see
What do you
what
got?
some of the, how the wording's gonna be and what kinds of
Restrictions.
restrictions we're gonna place on that. Does that sound reasonable, Jeremy?
Yeah, I mean, this is all just discussion right now. You're really not approving or denying anything. I think if we just leave it like Greg has it as a redlined version of the table, showing that as a conditional use, and then once you get a chance to review those standards, then you can come back to this and change it if you want to.
That's
How does everybody feel about that?
Yeah, sounds right.
All right, well, it's 7:15, so are we a pretty good stopping point, Jeremy?
Yeah, I think this is a fine stopping point. I think the next meeting, you guys can continue to go through the rest of the uses that are listed, and make some decisions. Hopefully the next meeting, you can get through this table, and we can keep moving forward. So.
All right.
And just an FYI, I will not be able to attend the next meeting. I have a prior meeting commitment for East Helena. We have a 300 lot subdivision in front of their planning board at the same time
Well,
that your meeting is. So Greg will be able to handle this for you in my absence.
Thank you, Jeremy.
All
yes,
right.
thank you.
I guess that going to staff communications and updates. We've got a conditional use coming before us, Greg?
Yeah, October 8th,
That's the next meeting too, right?
two meetings.
Two meetings.
So the next meeting we'll do zoning regs, and then the following meeting will be additional use.
Do we have,
And then
you want to give
we
it?
also likely have another CUP that'll be probably the second meeting in October. We have a completeness letter out with asking for a little bit more information. But as long as they get information to us in the next couple weeks, we should be able to get that on your second meeting agenda in October.
Okay. So the next meeting will continue the discussion on zoning regs, and then October 8th is a CU, and if there's time, we'll continue with the zoning. We still don't have any other comments? Any more public comment?
I'm not seeing anything other than me on public comment.
Okay. Mayor, do you have any comments?
I have some public comments. And I'll make sure that we actually have public comment outlined at the end so that people, because that gives you the ability to tell people, sit on your hands, we'll get to you at the end. Two thoughts that I had through this conversation that I may mention at the beginning, but I'll mention it now just so we can remember it for next time. One is, does our zoning match our growth policy? And specifically, I'll use the example that Perry called out. We allow a single housing everywhere, including C4, which basically means that ATM could be pulled out and a single-story bungalow could be built there. No questions asked, no anything. And if that's not what we want, this is where we fix and change that. The second thing is just kind of on conditional uses a little bit, and you talked about that we've turned down very, very few. I can't think of one, but we've turned down very, very few. But I have developed a unique view of conditional use lately, as over the last year and a half since I've been here, and that is, it's something where we are asking developers to spend money, and sometimes a lot of money up front, on a maybe before they do something. And And I think that discourages developers coming forth, particularly when we start talking about housing options. And it has its place, but I think it's burdensome if it's not adding value. And I like the comment about what options can we move to staff rather than be conditional uses, so that, you know, what can we articulate up front, this is what you've got to do, rather than telling somebody you have to go spend this drawing and this drawing and this engineering and this stuff. And all that's to get a maybe.
Yeah.
And I just think, so, that, like I said, in my role in as administration over the last year and a half, conditional uses I see where it's a challenge for some of the things we're trying to fix based on our growth policy, and so I would just like everybody, I'd like us to look at that and say, where is it and where can we get it out of that category and address it some other way other than that?
That's why I brought up the form-based, because, I mean, you tell people what you want, not people what you don't want. Yeah.
And again, I think, kind of going back to the RV park conversation, put those restrictions within the actual zoning document, so it's easy for
Absolutely.
them out the gate to be like, well, this really likely will fit for that. Versus,
It has to be 1,000 feet from existing residence, it has to be, you know, you could have all sorts of conditions in there. I will, just so you know, I'm gonna get yelled at for even allowing you guys to have a discussion about RV parks, and I'll just accept that, that's your business.
and then to me, I don't care.
Who's gonna yell at you? You're the mayor.
But we,
I know, and I was told that it was bad leadership if I allowed the conversation on RV parks to even exist, so.
Wow.
well,
Wow.
So, I mean, the north entrance, we haven't really talked about it, and it's in the urban renewal district as part of that. You know, I don't know that would be a horrible use for,
No.
you know,
Particularly when you start talking about being down in the floodplain where nothing can be built,
right?
you could put a dry RV park there,
Yeah.
That's revenue.
so.
Yeah.
I'll take those bullets, it's okay, it's no.
It's been a tough
Right.
week for you.
Yeah.
I think there'd be some pushback from the community on RV parks.
I think there's gonna be pushback there, but there's also gonna be enthusiasm. It just depends on which side of the coin. Again, end of the day, like, that's why you can allow certain things that's prettier than people would expect. It doesn't have to be the gravel pit.
Well, I mean, even ADUs are controversial.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Again,
definitely.
even, for some people, even just having a neighbor is controversial, like, you know,
I'm just saying,
and I'm.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
And
That's okay.
there's,
We're tough.
yeah, well, our job is also to listen to the community
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
and not just say,
We have to
do
remember.
what we want,
Right.
but what does the community expect, and how do they want their community to change and evolve over time?
Well,
And it goes back to the growth
and-
policy.
Yep.
I think it's also nice
Seek
because
their
we have a
input.
diversity of people here that listen to different members of the community too.
And some people are very vocal and some don't get involved at all.
Yep.
That could go one way or another. You know, out of 2,500 people, we have a certain number, maybe 50 people at the most, that are as opinionated as we are.
Might there be something that we could think about? It's probably gonna take a lot of brainstorming to get there. With regard to the application, that the form itself, for when somebody wants to come and apply for something,
Mm.
where we could have tweaks in such a form to where they could answer the bad questions up front, like, and what are your plans regarding landscaping? You know, to kind of get the word out there that there are certain things that mean something to us, and then with a little, addendum or asterisk or something, it could say where in the zoning ordinance it talks about these things. If we could get something going like that, we might have some people that would come in with things that are a little better baked than some of the things that we've run into in the past, where, you know.
I would say we're also working on some of that stuff with Dave and Brian on,
Mhm.
Good.
on trying to, let's say, streamline the CUP application so that
Mhm.
a developer or even a resident who wants to do something doesn't have to spend $20,000 on engineering work or architecture work or landscape architecture work just to get it in front of the planning board for a CUP review. So that's why I think with the last one you reviewed, you saw a lot more conditions where we said a landscaping plan, a final landscaping plan had to be submitted, final engineering plans had to be submitted for review prior to building. You know, there were a few of those things that were transitioning to conditions. As long as we get a good idea of what their project is and how they're going to comply with the sections of the zoning, that's what we're looking for. They don't necessarily have to have us, you know, full set of engineering plans, full set of architectural plans, that sort of thing. And so I guess that just wanted to tack that on, that it's a process that we're working through, to try to, with each application, I think we're going to get a little bit better at it. But we are working on it.
So when we put conditions on an approved conditional use permit, who has the authority to change those conditions, ignore conditions, or add additional?
No, if those are the conditions, those are the conditions. If somebody wants to change those conditions, they have to come back to the planning board and get those conditions changed. The staff cannot.
Yes, it's met. Yes, it's met.
Because Alpine Basin, we put a condition on it that we needed the flow rate improved, and that was taken off. Yes, it was one of the conditions of approval of Alpine Basin. Because we were adding 60 more homes where we were already low on the flow rate, and we made it a condition, and it was never met, and it just.
So what I remember was a condition that said, if the flow rate was impacted, they had to address it or something along that. And I know that I monitored it and it did not change it at all.
Well, you haven't had 60 homes built there yet.
I remember the condition you're talking, and I don't know that it's gone. It just hasn't been deemed as triggered, I think. Because I remember that was even before I was in, and I've seen it a little bit since then, because I went back to look at it and see what it was. So I don't think it's gone. It wasn't as clear of a condition, I think, as what you're thinking or hoping it was.
So staff actually uses those conditions and uses that prior to approve a building permit.
Prior to occupancy.
Yeah.
So you can get a building permit up front, but you don't get an occupancy until you've checked off all those lists.
Okay.
And the one that I'm thinking, because I remember having this conversation with you, the way it was written is, if there's a problem, you'll do such and such to address it, and it didn't exist.
And they've done nothing to address it. The city has done something to address it.
How so?
Well, the city's improving the flow rate by the water project.
But that has nothing to do with that project. That's the whole west bench.
Okay. I've always felt that we shouldn't have put it in as a condition of the owner. I mean, we put it in, there was something in there as a condition of what they have to do in order to get occupancy.
If you want to, I'm happy to sit down and kind of go through it, because I can tell you what happened and what tests were done on it.
Yeah, like I said, that's why I'm asking.
You raised this previously, we went and looked at it, and it's still there.
And the owner of the development isn't doing anything.
Correct.
But there's already homes that are occupied.
It was a do this if, and the if never happened.
Okay.
There was no impact.
Okay. And I don't recall it as that, but we'll look at it again.
We can do that.
Anyway, I just wanted to know who could change those. Jeff knows what I'm talking about.
Only the people who put it in effect. It comes back to you.
Yeah, I think it was us.
All right, it's 7:30. Any other comments, discussion? Okay.
Do you have a gavel?
We're adjourned. No, I don't.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff.